Which phone has the best camera? iPhone 16 Pro Max or Galaxy S25 Ultra? I'm here in London, this is Circus, and please ignore the fact that there's a Samsung advert behind me. This video is not sponsored by anyone, it's just in my opinion. But also I want to kick off with the audio eraser test. Both phones have a kind of AI background eraser, and I'm in Piccadilly Circus where it's very loud, so I'm going to repeat this clip twice so you can hear the difference between them. Very loud, so I'm going to repeat this clip twice so you can hear the difference between them. Very loud, so I'm going to repeat this clip twice so you can hear the difference between them. Hopefully, they both sound pretty good. I have to put these on because without fail, I will be called blind in the comments, and that's absolutely fine. You are entitled to your opinion, but I'm going to do my best to show you the difference. And you know the drill. Both phones are great, as you would expect for $1,200-ish. You can't go wrong with either of them, and chances are you'll buy one over the other because of iOS versus Android. Not because the photos are a touch sharper on one than the other, although actually there are some unique features to each phone, which maybe will sway you. Let's find out. Let's get the specs out of the way first. iPhone, 3 lenses. Samsung, 4 lenses. iPhone, 48 megapixel main. Samsung, 200 megapixel main. And also both phones' ultra-wide camera doubles as a macro. The main upgrade with this year's Samsung S25 Ultra is the new 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera. It's the only hardware difference. But we do also have their enhanced Pro Visual engine, which handles all the processing, and this year particularly it's improved skin tones, it's reduced noise in low light video. Actually, it does seem to be a marked improvement year on year. Zooming in and out is also smoother. We have that new AI audio eraser, very similar to what we have on the iPhone, and like the iPhone, we can now shoot in log, or Galaxy log as they call it, where it basically records a flatter looking image, but it's capturing more dynamic range, to which you can then throw on a LUT to get away from that Samsung look and make your videos look more distinctive, or with a single press in the gallery app, you've got Samsung's correct color. You can also shoot in 10-bit HDR now, as well as in log if you want to. The Expert RAW mode has more options now, including this variable aperture, giving you more or less bokeh in a photo. We also have what is essentially the iPhone's photography styles, with these, I suppose you'd call them smart filters, you can play around with before or after taking a shot. That's basically what's new with the S25 Ultra. There's a couple of things I'll show you in a minute, but let's talk about the iPhone, which of course launched last September. The Pro and the Pro Max have identical camera setups. I'm using the Pro Max here. The main upgrade was also the ultra-wide with this new 48 megapixel lens. Both Pro models also now use the same 5x telephoto. Previously, the smaller one used a 3x. We also have improved studio quality mics along with the new audio mix feature. We also got the revamped photography styles, which I actually use all the time to help you get away from that typical iPhone look. Although for this comparison, unless I say otherwise, I've just gone for the basic auto default modes and no filters or edits. I'm just showing you what's come straight out of the phone. They've also improved their processing with Smart HDR5, as they call it. There's now an option to shoot spatial video for your Apple Vision Pro, which I'm sure you have. And the iPhone can now record in 4K 120, which you can also do in the Pro video mode of the Samsung, but I feel like the implementation here is much better. It can shoot in Dolby Vision, it's stabilized, and you can easily slow it down to a half, quarter, or even eighth speed for some very sexy, high-quality slow motion. And of course we have the new Final Cut camera app. This isn't exclusive to the new phones. You can download it right now for free on older iPhones, but it gives you some more of the pro features that we can also get on the Samsung phone that previously we'd have to have a third-party app for on your iPhone. And of course we get this new camera control button, which acts as a physical shutter and a zoom slider, and I can't say I use it that much, but I don't know, some people may love it. So I've got my timeline in front of me here with about, I don't know, a couple hundred photos in it, and I just want to start with a blind test. That's going to have a couple of photos side by side. I may have switched around which one is on which side of the screen for you, or maybe I haven't. Anyway, this is more about you seeing which you prefer, which you think looks better, rather than, you know, immediately associating one with Samsung and one with the iPhone. Can you A, see much difference, and B, do you have a preference one way or the other, just from the couple of blind shots I'm showing you here? Let me put you out of your misery. On the left, S25 Ultra. I didn't switch things around. On the right, the iPhone 16 Pro / Pro Max. Did you guess correctly? Let me take you through the full focal range of these phones with the help of the Elizabeth Tower and distance there, going from the ultra-wide to the 1x and then up to the first of the telephoto lenses on the S25, the 3x, before then hitting the 5x, which is the iPhone's telephoto camera and the Samsung's second telephoto, and then punching into 10 times zoom, up to 30 times, and just because it lets you on the Samsung all the way up to 100 times zoom, which is still pretty unusable. Now, of course, the Samsung does have an advantage here with those two telephoto cameras. And the 3x optical means that between 3x and, well, 4.9x, until that iPhone's telephoto kicks in, that narrow zoom range is benefiting from that actual optical lens. Let me show you a couple more. This is Regent Street, first with the ultra-wide camera, and actually the iPhone definitely does jump off the screen, being a bit more vibrant, a bit warmer in tone. I'm not saying that's necessarily good or bad at this point, just pointing it out. But then at 10x, the iPhone is a touch noisier. I think fine detail is better on the Samsung. I will give Samsung the win when it comes to zoom, simply because we have a second optical lens for the 3 to 4.9 times, and also just the long-range zoom is clearly superior. I need Apple to give us a better 5x telephoto. It's just not good enough in low light. It's too noisy. One thing I've always loved about iPhones is how smooth the transition is when you switch between lenses, zooming in and out. Android phones historically just haven't been able to keep up. But year after year, Samsung's have got better, and the S25 is a marked improvement even over last year. It's comparable to the iPhone now, and you can zoom in further, and at those long-range zooms, the video is more stable. And hopefully, without making you feel sick, here is a little side-by-side comparison of the two zooming in and out. And new for the S25 is this zoom toggle, which gives you a slider for zooming in and out, which is much smoother than pinching in or out with your finger on the screen or using one of the preset focal lengths. And while you can still see the transition going between different lenses, you're always going to really. This new way of controlling the zoom actually makes it much smoother. So in terms of photography, we could be here all day pixel peeping and comparing the slightest differences between them, and arguably this comparison is more academic than ever as more and more people do use these new photography style filters. I know I do, especially on the iPhone. But I have also noticed some patterns. Let's talk about color, because consistently the iPhone leans towards a warmer tone, the Samsung cooler. But unfortunately, neither are particularly consistent. For example, here with the skateboarder, I would say the Samsung shot is more true to life. While I do like the aesthetic look of the iPhone, it's slightly more filmic, it's warmer, it wasn't that yellow, that warm in real life. So for this one, I prefer the Samsung, but then for this one with these couple of guys, I prefer the iPhone. The Samsung just isn't picking up the undertones in the skin for both lighter and darker skin tones. The iPhone, even if it's not perfect, just gives more dimension to faces and skin. But then again, some people do prefer a slightly more mattified, flatter, almost airbrushed look, which the Samsung leans towards. And also, I love the fact that you can turn any regular photo into a portrait and back, because it captures all that depth information even when you're just taking a regular photo. I've also found when just shooting with the regular main wide lens at 1x, the iPhone can be a little bit more detailed, both in light and low light scenarios. And this could be down to the fact that the iPhone bends down from its 48 megapixel resolution to a 24 megapixel final output, whereas the Samsung bends down from 200 to 12. So technically, the iPhone's final output resolution is double that of the Samsung. However, I have experienced a bit of trouble with the Samsung's motion. For example, this lady here with this very textural jumper is pretty soft on the Samsung. It's much sharper, much more detailed on the iPhone's picture, but this could be motion related because the next image, I'm actually jumping back to preferring the Samsung. The iPhone does look a bit too over-sharpened here. And this is interesting because if I show you some other photos in motion, I took these out of a moving taxi with the subjects also in motion, and the iPhone did a much better job at keeping those subjects sharp and in focus. They were pretty much all blurry on the Samsung. So when it comes to photography, the Samsung is the zoom king, but I do generally find myself preferring portraits taken on the iPhone. Now in terms of regular video quality, this has been shot at 4K 60 with the rear cameras. What do you think? In terms of Pro options. I like that with the iPhone, you can shoot up to 4K 120 in ProRes, which is a much higher bitrate, although it also takes up a lot more storage, and it's a bit of a faff unless you're using external storage, but you can shoot up to 4K 120 ProRes in log via an external SSD for some really high quality video. With the Samsung, you can also shoot in 4K 120 if you want to slow it down as well. You've also got this new Galaxy Log option. There isn't a ProRes mode per se for a higher bitrate, but what I do like about the Samsung is that you can shoot in log at any resolution or frame rate. You're not limited to having to use ProRes like you are on the iPhone. But while I've got you, let me give you a bit of a behind the scenes of the studio. This is where I'm working right now on the edit for this video. We've got Stormy, also one of my favorite little gadgets recently. This is a aluminium frame shroud for the Mac Mini, but actually looks like a Mac Pro desktop. I think that's really cute. So in terms of video, what do you reckon? It's pretty crazy though how different the colors can be between the phones. If I pull out to the ultra wide and then go back to the main lens and just start walking forward, this is a place called Estelle Manor, a very beautiful manor house, and despite being quite a grey day, we've got a vastly warmer tone on the iPhone and a cooler on the Samsung. But once we punch into 5 times, you can see the difference in that stabilization. The Samsung's doing a much better job, and I found this to be the case in low light video as well. So the Samsung definitely wins for zoom both in photography and videography. And while I still hate the fact that we have all this glare, this lens flare on the iPhone, which despite year after year them saying, oh, we've added this new coating to the lens which is supposed to reduce it, it's still there and it's worse than pretty much any other phone out there, which is really frustrating. And actually sometimes I do quite like, especially in low light, shooting on the Samsung. However, I don't always love the colors on the S25 Ultra here. In low light they can be a bit oversaturated, it doesn't look quite as realistic, and while the Samsung does do a better job at stabilizing the footage when you zoom in, generally speaking, for me, I do prefer video captured on the iPhone. And as someone who shares a lot of social media content, while the iPhone is still far from perfect, it is still my go-to and most people's go-to choice for capturing and then sharing content on social. And both of them offer some sort of portrait video. We've got cinematic mode on the iPhone, we've got portrait video on the S25, and while they both still top out at 4K 30, I'd love if there was a 60 FPS option. I've always found the iPhone works a little better for cinematic video. I don't think there's a better option on the market. You can see the bokeh around my head. Obviously it varies based on the lighting around you, but I've always just found the iPhone a bit more natural looking. One little feature of the Samsung that I love and I think is criminally underrated is the ability just to hold on to this while playing back video and it immediately goes into this slow motion. It kind of just warps into slow-mo. It will actually work at any frame rate, even say 30 FPS, and then once you let go of your finger, you can actually just tap to save that little clip as a slow motion file. I also appreciate the S25 lets you switch between the rear and the front cameras even while filming. You can't do that on the iPhone, although at least you can now pause and then resume recording since iOS 18. So when it comes to video, I would say the Samsung offers you more pro modes, and if you know what you're doing with it, you might be able to get more out of it. But for the average user, I think the iPhone does still give you a more consistent video experience. And finally, when it comes to the selfie camera, neither have significantly changed over the last couple of years. We've got basically the same hardware, although both selfie cameras do benefit from the improved processing with the Pro Visual Engine and Smart HDR5. And both do a decent job, although I do quite like the iPhone has a slightly wider field of view. Although I'm not quite sure what happened with this low-light selfie, and in fact both are pretty atrocious when shooting video at night. But how about some selfie video in low light? Recording both of these with the front camera, obviously, at 4K 30, at full arm stretch, and just looking at the two screens, I can see the iPhone definitely has a wider field of view. Get some motion on the go here, so you probably see a lot of vibration in the footage. This is pretty low light. People are looking at me thinking, why is that guy talking to himself with two phones? If only they knew it was a camera comparison. Both phones offer a range of photo editing tools, which you can access through the gallery, but I think Samsung deserves a point here for offering a greater range of options, and also they just work better, particularly the AI eraser. I don't really think the iPhone's cleanup tool does a particularly good job. I think if there's one takeaway from this video is that both phones have a lot of room for improvement, and to be honest, rivals from Vivo and Oppo and Honor and OnePlus in many ways now offer better cameras. But that's a conversation for another video. Anyway, which one do you think won this test? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic. And I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.